Children cannot consent to puberty blockers. Common sense, but also the words on the now iconic sandwich board sign worn by Billboard Chris. Billboard Chris was attacked by radical trans activists last week in Vancouver. The police stood by and did nothing. Chris has been ringing the alarm bells on gender ideology, how it affects child's education, the healthcare system, the judicial system, and the media has stood by and done nothing. And who else has stood by and done nothing? The Conservative Party of Canada, the official opposition. In fact, a lot of them have been endorsing the exact ideology that Billboard Chris and real conservatives are fighting against. This ideology affects so many aspects of Canadian society, and it is preying upon Canadian children. Billboard Chris joins me today to talk about the sickening cowardice of the Blue Tie Party. And the conversation starts now.
I promise you, I will not let you down.
The trucks parked outside illegally should move.
Canada's Conservatives will meet our Paris climate commitment.
Enough with the woke. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I take that back.
To champion our conservative principles.
We are the party of law and order.
To call in the auditors.
We haven't yet decided whether we're going to call for the government to impose a mandatory test or vaccination.
And we will win the next election. Canada must not ignore the reality of climate change.
Why weren't Canadians vaccinated in January and February like everyone else?
Welcome, everybody, to Controlled Opposition. It is Greg Wycliffe. This is episode 13. Before we get into it with Billboard Chris, I want to plug this event, The Failing Healthcare System, Speaking Moistly Live. We're going to be talking about the gender ideology in the healthcare system, along with, of course, everything that's happened over the past 3 years. Dr. Patrick Phillips will be there. The registered nurse, Sarah C. from Frontline Nurses, and also a paramedic, Scarlett Martin, will also be there. You can check that out at cdnpoli.com/event. The event is April 15th, later this month. Should be very exciting. But today, I have two very special guest hosts. Of course, you know Jeremy McKenzie, one of the most popular political dissidents in Canada. And today we have the iconic transgender ideology activist himself, the one-man army. You've probably seen him all over your Twitter feed recently. The iconic sandwich board wearing man, children cannot consent to puberty blockers, Billboard Chris. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. It's been a crazy week. I want to thank all of my opposition who use violence in an attempt to silence, because all that's happened is we've made worldwide media and reached tens of millions of people who would not have known about this child abuse otherwise. So they're doing a great job for us.
That's absolutely right. And, I aired an interview with you last night, Chris, where we talked at the trucker convoy, and you talked 20 different times you've been attacked, basically. A few of them have been caught on camera, but this was one where I think was very viral because the attack was just like right in your face, right? And it's a beautiful thing when you go out with your sandwich board signs, and it's just like all the demons come out and start shrieking, and you kind of start to see this ideology for what it really is.
Yeah,
but
and the police officer smiles from ear to ear as well. That helped with the video, I think.
Yeah,
but the police are part of the problem. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And on the show, of course, we talked about controlled opposition. We talked about how this Conservative Party is really telling a more nefarious lie than the Liberals at this point, because they're saying, we're going to fight for you. We're going to stand against this, these evil ideologies that are destroying our country. But of course, we saw in the past week during transgender visibility that they are actually endorsing this stuff and they are not fighting for us. So I want to know, it's very obvious to you now, I'm sure, that this Conservative Party is not fighting for us. But when did this start for you, Chris? When did you first initially sort of start to realize, oh crap, this Conservative Party really doesn't care about this and they are not fighting for me? Did this happen before you started your activism or as your activism continued?
Well, yeah, I've known this the entire time. Obviously, they're doing nothing about this. No media were speaking the truth about this. Nobody in Canada really was speaking about this outside of their echo chambers. And so I decided to head out into the real world, because that's where things still get done. If you want to affect change, you can't just stay on social media, reach 1,000 people and think you're changing anything. I wanted to start conversations. That's been my objective the entire time, since before the very first billboard went up, because I didn't start this as a human billboard. I started this with some actual billboards. But my objective is to start conversations, because people are getting fired from their jobs for believing in biological reality. I've had people get fired or suspended or investigated simply for standing on the street with me. And we should be able to have conversations about something that is affecting the health of our children for life. When we're sterilizing kids and cutting off body parts, we should be able to have a calm, fact-based, compassionate discussion about what's going on. Yet apparently that's hate to just even want to talk about this. So we have all these communists trying to silence us with violence, these fascists, the new brown shirts, and we can't let them win. We're basically dealing with demons, and they're going to get more angry as we continue to make headway here, as we're seeing. Just last night, a woman named Riley Gaines, a young woman, an athlete, was assaulted at San Francisco State University for speaking about why men don't belong in women's sports. Apparently that makes her a hateful bigot.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that. Obviously, I want to lead this conversation to solutions, of course, the cowardice of the Conservative Party. But let's focus, let's talk about that first, how, this is not a marginal issue, guys. This is not some sort of fringe, sort of like pet issue where it's just trans people, it's just this. Let's kind of start brainstorming here amongst the three of us. What aspects of our society is this affecting? Of course, education for children. This is off the top of my head. The judicial system, as we're seeing that, parents are being persecuted for wanting to object to their kids transitioning at a young age. Help me out here. Sports, obviously.
Everything. Everything. This is coming from every international organization. It's coming from all of the leftist governments in the world. It's coming from the medical complex. It's coming from the school systems. And the police force, in many cases, are turning a blind eye to violence. So they're supporting this as well. Because when Vancouver police act like they did last Friday when I was assaulted, what does that do? It sends a message to every Canadian that you're not safe to go out and talk about this. And it scares people who would do otherwise. Now they're not going to go out because they know they're going to get assaulted and they're not going to get protected. So they're part of the problem here too. But it's coming from absolutely everywhere. Yet here's the thing, in our favor. This is why we're going to win. We have the truth. And we don't need money. The truth spreads for free, as it is doing. Just 7 months ago, I was meeting with some staffers of the House Oversight Committee, the most powerful committee in Congress in the United States, because I travel into the United States a lot now. And I've made amazing friends there. I have the best friends I've ever had in my life. I work with amazing organizations like Moms for Liberty, who have 115,000 moms fighting this across the country now. But even last August, these politicians in Congress didn't want to touch this. It was too hot to handle. They wanted to take on the sports issue because that's an easy one. You've got 6'4" Leah Thomas lapping women in the swimming pool when he was 450th as a man, stealing their gold medals. Everyone knows this is wrong, and that's an easy win. But my message to these conservatives and Republicans has always been, if you just tell the truth about this, you can't lose. You won't lose a single Republican or conservative vote. You're only going to pick up moderates and leftists. And just since August, we've seen this massive shift where now 25 states are passing or have already passed legislation to stop this child abuse of giving children puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries. So we just got to tell the truth and we'll win.
That's absolutely right. And that is so difficult for conservatives for some reason. And it's absolutely disgusting because, like, as I mentioned in the beginning, the trans day of visibility. What are we seeing? We're seeing multiple conservative members of parliament saying, hey, respect and dignity for all, and the trans flag. What does that even mean? Respect and dignity for all. There's so much evil word games that they play with this ideology that really sort of undermines just basic human logic, basic human decency. It's crazy.
They're also oppressed, Greg. They're so oppressed with all the support in academia and the state, the police, popular culture, sports culture. Literally everywhere you go, it's everywhere, and it's just a symptom of the problem, which is this neo-communist cultural Marxism that's destroying Western civilization. It didn't come out of nowhere. It's been implemented nefariously on purpose with malevolence for this exact reason. And these people will come out and they'll say things like, "Well, these are they're not your kids. What do you care?" Children are the future. That is the future of our society, the future of our civilization. And if they are to be indoctrinated in a toxic, self-destructive, malevolent way of thinking, then they're endangering our society and our civilization, which affects everyone. These kids will eventually grow up, and they're going to have to go into the world. And what are they going to be? Judges, cops, mayors? Like, you know what I'm saying? So, it affects everybody, and everybody has, a right to express their opinion on things and use their voice to participate in the public discourse. I thought that's what we all thought we were allowed to do, because they say, use your words, use your words and talk. And now we're living in a country where you're not allowed to do that. We're actually going to pass laws to prevent you from doing it. And if you try anyway, we'll put you in jail. And that's what the Conservative Party is fine with. So.
Yeah, and like you said, Jeremy, our children are the future, and this stuff, this stuff that they're feeding children is so, I don't understand what reality where parents are like, this is a good idea. Let's show this to children. Do you know, Chris, because I know you're basically an expert on this topic now, do you know what aged kids that they show the gender unicorn or the gender bread person? Like how young, what grade of kids are exposed to this type of stuff?
It depends on the teacher. They can show it at any age.
Really?
There's a woman named Pamela Buffoni in Ottawa who took the Ottawa Carleton School District to the Human Rights Tribunal because one day her 6-year-old daughter came home from school distraught because the teacher had taught her that boys and girls aren't real.
Oh my God.
Because these insane psychopaths really believe that it's all just a social construct, that it's a feeling inside. So I'm glad you brought this up straight away, because this is a great place to start this conversation. The genderbread person. It's not a gingerbread man, that would be misgendering it. It's a genderbread person. And I talk about this all the time because right on there, I don't know if you can zoom in, but it defines gender identity. And this is what nobody can really define. What is a gender identity? We're teaching all of our kids that they have one, yet almost nobody can tell you what it is. So what does it say? It says it's based on your personality, your job, your hobbies, your likes and dislikes, roles in society, and expectations. Expectations upon you, obviously. So, what does your job have to do with your gender? What gender are you because you're doing, broadcasting? Maybe you're non-binary because that's kind of male and female. What does your hobby have to do with anything? So if a girl likes football and she wants to be an engineer, does this put her on the boy end of the spectrum? This whole ideology hinges on one thing and one thing only: sexist, regressive stereotypes. And when I read this to people on the street who are yelling at me, who are very hostile, because I'm this terrible bigot, apparently, I'll read that to them and they'll say, oh, that's very problematic. I had the most woke teacher in history one day talk to me for an hour on the streets of Vancouver. And I read this to her and she goes, oh, yes, that's very problematic. Yes, you're right. It is very problematic indeed that we are telling our children that stereotypes determine their sex. But it's not just that resource. People can dismiss that and they say, oh, that's just one resource made by some activist. Yes, but it's the most used resource all around the world, and they use it in children's hospitals even to teach the staff about gender identity. Yeah. But look at these videos that I've tweeted out from Boston Children's Hospital. Number one ranked children's hospital in the country, the most prestigious gender clinic, and the director, Dr. Jeremy Carswell, says it is things like a little girl trying to pee standing up, a boy who doesn't want to get a haircut, or playing with the, quote, opposite gender toys. Toys. These are what determine your gender. She also says trying on a sibling's clothes is a sign your child is transgender. Well, find me a little boy, 3 years old, with some big sisters who doesn't get dressed up in their princess dresses one day. This is called play. If a little girl has 3 older brothers who all pee standing up, yeah, she's going to try to pee standing up over the toilet. apparently now that means you're trans. We are dealing with insane cult members who are telling hundreds of thousands of kids that unless they medically transition their bodies, they will never find true happiness. And they're turning them into lifelong, anorgasmic, infertile pharmaceutical patients. And we are to expect that this is helping them to be who they really are? Absolute nonsense. And this is not a fringe issue. So Canadians need to get educated, first of all, and then they need to start speaking up about this because the media isn't going to do it for us.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, a lot of our, we would play with, Batman and things like this and Army Men and stuff. And I mean, I went on to join the Army, but most kids didn't. I don't think just playing with, Army Men and toys and stuff is, oh, well, you're 5. All right, sign him up for Delta Force. That must be, it's just a child playing as they do. It doesn't mean we're not going to make some kind of life-altering, huge decision on like a life and death decision, which this is. Because as we know, over 50% of people that subscribe to this ideology and commit to it attempt suicide at some point in their lives. Over 50%. I think that's probably the highest I've ever heard of. So we're ignoring that and just saying, let's push this on children who are the least equipped to manage something this serious.
Let's address the suicide thing real quick. So there's tons of false information going on out there. Now, it's true. Obviously, kids who are struggling with this have higher suicidal ideation. And you'll hear stats all the time. Some people say 41% of these kids kill themselves. Not true. First of all the studies kind of suck. But it is true that the suicidal ideation is higher. It's higher for kids with autism. It's higher for kids with personality disorders. It's higher for kids who've been abused and traumatized. That's all these kids. All these kids are dealing with some other mental health comorbidity. They have eating disorders. They're in foster care. Parents are 10 times more likely to have been sex offenders. Obviously, that's going to usually be the dads, not always. But girls who've been sexually abused, guess what? They're not loving being a girl right now. And if you give them an escape route where they can opt out of their sex, some of them are going to take you up on that. So there's all these comorbid factors going on. Suicides never happen for one reason, but they use this to coerce parents to go along with medically transitioning their own kid, because they'll tell parents you can have a dead daughter or a live son. Right. But it's not true. There is no epidemic of actual suicides. Dr. Laura Edwards-Leeper started working at the first gender clinic in the United States back in 2007. She worked there for 15 years, transitioning these kids. She wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post last year where she admits she's not aware of any actual epidemic of suicides. And if you look at the real statistics, we only have studies on adults. And with adults, the best study we have shows that 10 years after sex reassignment surgery is when suicides peak. And they're 19.1 times higher than their peers after adjusting for other mental health problems.
Right. And that's what I've been trying to say to people. Like, you're like, if I was going to sell you a product or something, I'm like, yeah, do you want to try this? Is there anything I should know? Is there any side effects? There's a 50% chance you'll try and kill yourself. I think that's worth mentioning. I think we should bring that up. And I had a clip of a woman, I don't know where she was, but she had been transitioned when she was a teenager. They had a double mastectomy and started testosterone injections. Her body's all messed up now, and she's like got all kinds of issues and problems. And she's, this is like this for life. Her life is irreparably damaged now because some person had to be woke. And this inability, this cowardice, this weakness to not, put yourself at that. Canadians don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to have uncomfortable conversations. We have the culture of like just basically let anything happen, and making someone feel uncomfortable or in a tough spot is akin to committing a crime of some kind. Like they feel like they're being like assaulted. These people, like just confronting them with a different opinion, they feel as though like I'm being genocided. The way they react, it's completely insane, and we're being lorded over and ruled, condescended to by a bunch of petulant children that are essentially robots, and the only thing in their operating system is just communism 2.0.
And in many ways, like you were saying, Chris, these people are already in a bad spot. Maybe they have some mental issue already, and they're essentially now victims to this gender ideology. Like they believed in the insane, nonsensical rhetoric, because that's really what it is. It's all these mantras, weird images of gingerbread people. Like it's so not based in any sort of reliable science or logic or reality really whatsoever.
the first line of defense should be therapy and talk. Like, let's just have a conversation. Let's find out what's wrong with you, buddy, or lady, like whatever. What's going on?
That's right.
Like, let's try and figure it out. And the conservatives voted to make that illegal.
That's exactly right. We're going to talk to that in a second, but I do want to give a quick example of just, someone's a detransitioner sharing her experience here.
I ruined my life.
Can
when
we
you
play
break
the whole
it down, I decided.
Yeah, we can play the whole clip.
It's about 3 minutes. Yep. I use this. So I actually found this clip on Reddit last year and tweeted it out, and it went viral. She is since now testifying in legislatures across the United States, and she's extremely brave. But I do think it's important for people to watch this whole clip, not just 30 seconds, because this is the example for all of these kids. She's not a one-off. This is standard.
And I was just saying, like, they are talking like, oh, trans voices and these people have and they should be able to speak. What about these people? Why are they being silenced? There's a lot of them, and they're dying, and they need help. And I would like to help them, but it's hard to do when the state basically buries them in the closet to die alone.
Yeah, this is the majority of the clip, Chris, but you can follow along with the subtitles at the bottom.
Yeah.
I ruined my life. When you break it down, I decided that I didn't want to be a woman before I had ever even experienced being a woman. I had no idea what being a woman was like because I was a child. I want to say that I really feel like some people in the trans community and the trans medicalists and the doctors really, really target the most vulnerable of us. I have borderline personality disorder, and I know for a fact that this is the reason for my transition. It's a very difficult mental illness, and one of the core features is not having any sense of self or identity, and my doctors knew this. I told them, even though they didn't ask, that I had been diagnosed with BPD, and it was all fine to them. I wasn't happy as a girl, so that meant I was a boy and I was trans, and so I just took the cure that was handed to me. I was told that I was being given a cure, and I wouldn't want to kill myself anymore. And it wasn't true. I lost a lot of things to this, and I just hope that anyone else who's going through what I went through as a young girl will not be prescribed hormones and surgery because of other things. There are so many mental health disorders that make you hate your body, and the solution isn't to change your body, it's to fix your brain, I
think that's a great summary. She summarizes so many things so beautifully there, and like you said, she is so brave. I decided I didn't want to be a woman before I even knew what it meant to be a woman. Like the more you talk out this gender ideology, especially as it pertains to children and selling it to children, it's just becomes so clear how insane it is. And then furthermore, it's like, why is no one talking about this? Why is it a man from Vancouver with a sandwich board sign on his body that is the most strongest, loudest voice in the entire country? What is going on here?
Yeah, so I just want to say Prisha Mosley is her name, and I would like people watching this to give her some love and support. Her Twitter handle is dtransaqua, AQUA. And just give her some love because she's doing amazing things, testifying across the country to help put a stop to this. But yeah, everyone was afraid and is afraid to talk about this issue. But what are we going to do? Let people silence us when we're concerned about the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of our lives?
I think this is closely related to like a lot of what we've gone through the last couple of years with this gaslighting and this browbeating by the state to say like, well, you're not an expert. You don't have an opinion. You're not. These people are the experts. They're doctors. Who are you? You're simply a person. I have a soul, and I can tell the difference between right and wrong. I don't care. Joseph Mengele was a doctor too. Okay, and doctors have had quite a, I mean, what a credibility boost they've had in the last couple of years. Hey, the 2020s have been good for the profession of doctors and the healthcare industry for sure.
So the response to that, here's my response to that always. I don't want anyone to listen to me. Please don't listen to me, everybody watching this. I want you to go listen to the experts. I want you to go read and watch the stuff that these experts produce. Go watch the Boston Children's Hospital videos that I recorded before they deleted them all from their YouTube channel. Go watch the Zoom call with the president of WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Go listen to Johanna Olsen Kennedy, who runs the busiest gender clinic in the United States at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, where she says that, here's the thing, adolescents are capable of making a reasoned, logical decision. And if they want to get breasts at some point in the future, they can go and get them. This is how she talks about children who are having their breasts cut off as young as 12 years old. I've got Kellen Lackhart, the psychiatrist at Kaiser Permanente in California, admitting they cut off the breasts of a 12-year-old girl and they turned 16-year-old boys' penises inside out. You can go read what the medical officials from Sweden, England, Norway, Finland, and the great free state of Florida have all said, where the medical bodies said there's no evidence to support this, and they put a stop to this. So you don't need to listen to anything that crazy Billboard guy from Vancouver says, because I'm just the messenger relaying the words from these experts themselves.
And as we've seen there's an NDP, MPP, Kristen Wong-Tam, I believe, who recently presented a private member's bill that says, hey, we want to protect the drag queens and the LGBTQ+, and you're going to get fined $25,000 if you criticize anybody under this rainbow umbrella. And, I want to lead this into a question, but it seems like not only is this just not a marginal issue, but it seems like the entire society is held hostage by this rainbow mafia. It's at the point where something like this can be presented. Hey, we're going to make this a protected class. You can't criticize the fact that we're essentially grooming children with all sorts of insane ideas, and it's essentially leading to ruinous lifestyles for these people. Why do you think, Chris, in your experience, why are conservatives hesitant to talk about this? What's going on?
They are cowards and they're career politicians. And the type of people who get into the Conservative Party now are only the people who will go along with the current narrative. They will not allow any actual leaders to run for the party. There's a man named Garrett Van Dorland who just wanted to run for an open seat that's coming up. He's in Ontario. I happen to have met him twice on the streets of Ottawa. Once with Aaron O'Toole's assistant, when Aaron O'Toole was leader of the Conservative Party.
Was he wearing his high heels that day? Or was that a different day?
What's that?
So I said, were they wearing their high heels that day, or was that a different day?
Yeah, Aaron, that was a different day for Aaron. But this guy Garrett gets it. He's super smart. I've met him in Vancouver as well, because I went and I got kicked out of one of Leslyn Lewis's campaign events when she was running for leadership of the Conservative Party in North Vancouver. I went, I got the mic from Garrett. He was there that day. And they had known I was coming because I tweeted I was going. And the second I walked into this building, someone had already contacted her campaign team to say Billboard Chris was coming. So that was a nice honor. But I asked her the question. I did my little spiel and I said, what are you going to do about this child abuse? And she just refused to answer the question. She made it about something else. And I'm not going to take a non-answer for an answer. So I didn't sit back down. And I caused a bit of a scene and I got kicked out of there. But that's fine. I exposed them for what they are. They're cowards who are afraid to take this on. But here's the thing about Garrett. He wanted to run for a seat. He's been working for an MP for years. He's super smart, good-looking guy. He'd be a great candidate. He's young. They won't let him run. Why? Because he's pro-life. Now, abortion is not even an issue in Canada. So any conservative, they can't do anything about it. This has been settled by the Supreme Court. And like Stephen Harper used to say, this isn't an issue. There's nothing we can do about it. The Liberals try to make it an issue, but it's not. And your personal beliefs about abortion, honestly, are irrelevant. But they wouldn't let him run because he's conservative. He's too conservative for the Conservative Party. You have to toe the party line. You have to be one of these lame activists who's going to push through all their own stuff. These guys are just liberals with a big C for conservative. They're not conservatives in actuality. They're conservatives in name only.
I'm wondering if we should start actually refusing to call them the Conservative Party and just call them the Blue Tie Party. I don't think I don't think they even deserve. I don't even think they deserve to even be referred to as conservative at this point. And I think that, you know, of all the other issues, you know, mass migration, they don't talk about. The authoritarian behavior from Trudeau, they don't really like to talk about. Oh, you got frozen bank accounts. You got thrown in jail for having the wrong opinion in a democratic society. Yeah, we're not going to focus on that either. But when it comes to this, thing of preying upon children, you know, they seem to be failing the litmus test across the board. It's like, yeah, we're conservatives. We're not going to stand up to this insane gender ideology. And the things, the kids is one thing, but it's also like, if you're also saying trans women are women and you're like repeating that mantra, it's like, what is, it's total insanity. It's total cowardice. Yeah. And you wanted to say something, Jeremy, but I wanted to ask you, Chris, of like, you know, where have you actually seen progress? Or, you know, have you ever seen a conservative throw a backbone before? Or does that just not happen?
No, they don't. And I've talked to some of these MPs on the street. I've been to Ottawa 8 times. I stand right out front of Parliament. I've talked to a number of them. They support me privately.
Oh, God.
But they won't speak up about this. And they tell me, now, I don't want to run for politics. I would hate to be a politician. I'm not a politician. But if I wanted to run to be a member of Parliament, they wouldn't even let me. So that's the way it is in Canada. You have to get approval from the nomination committee before you can even run. Aaron O'Toole, when he was the leader, get this is beautiful. I was standing right in front of Parliament, right in front of the entrance to the House of Commons. There's only one entrance in and out of there, down on the street. He was coming back from lunch. This was about 2 summers ago. He was coming back from lunch with 3 of his aides. It was a heat wave going on. It was like 95 degrees. They all had masks on outside. He gets to the crosswalk. He hits the button. I'm right across the street. He sees me with my sign on, which says children cannot consent to puberty blockers. He has to go past me to get to the entrance. So what did he do? He turned left. He walked 200 yards that way to the next crosswalk. He crossed over the street there. And then he doubled back all the way up the ramp in a heat wave, in a suit, with a mask on outside, to avoid a dad who travels the country, who has always voted conservative, because that dad thinks we shouldn't be sterilizing kids. That's Aaron O'Toole. That's the entire Conservative Party. Yep. And by the way, I just walked down to the next crosswalk and I met him there. This guy's nuts.
It is a perfect.
This tells you everything you need to know about these people. Like, that's who they decided. That's the man that we think should be in charge of our nation. That's the standard. That's the litmus test. That's all that's required. That's pathetic, you know. And I've been saying, you know, people like yourself that are actually out there fighting this fight and taking the hits for it and, you know, paying the consequences and so on. That's where the fight is. Why are we supporting and giving money and energy and time to these losers who don't do anything? This is like if you're in a war and you're funneling, you know, all of your aid, support, training, equipment, and so on to some mercenary group that's chilling on a beach in France. They're just hanging out while your actual guys are fighting with no support, no supplies, and you're like, no, they're extreme. I don't want to help them. Like, so do you want to win or not? You don't want to. You're not in this fight. So they say, I support you privately. No, you don't. That's not support. Support is public. When you show up, if I'm in a fight and you show up and I see you standing next to me and we're, you know, locked arms, that's support. You sitting from the safety of your condo in Ottawa, eating chips, looking down from the, you know, the window of your apartment building or something, saying, oh, I hope he wins, but I'm not going to help him. That's not support. That's cowardice. And that's certainly not leadership. So every single person in that party that adopts this mentality, you're not only abdicating your responsibilities and your duties as a leader, you're contributing to the problem with your weakness and your cowardice. You're a fraud and you are the problem.
Yes. And we got support the trucker convoy got support outside of Canada from someone like Christine Anderson. If I'm not mistaken, Chris, you have gotten support from Australian MPs. You've gotten support.
I talked to Christine this week, actually, from Europe.
There you go.
She gave me your support. I'm meeting with Scottish MPs in May. And an MP in Scotland invited me to come.
And what is like paint a picture for us. What is distinctly different about this breed of real conservatives? What is it like? Tell us what it's like, Chris, to interact with a real conservative politician from another country, because we have no idea what that's like here in Canada.
Yeah. What do they smell like? Do they float? Do they shoot lasers out of their eyes? We've heard stories, but none of us have ever really met one.
Here's the thing, guys. It's really weird. They talk like a normal person.
Amazing.
Amazing.
What else?
Have you heard of this guy called Ron DeSantis?
Yes.
Let's look at what he did in Florida by talking like a parent from the year 2015. So he won his first election as governor just by a hair, beating out Andrew Gillum, who later got busted in some cocaine-fueled orgy thing in a hotel room. If Andrew had won, Florida would look like a different place completely. But Ron DeSantis barely won. Since then, he's just talked like a normal person. He says we shouldn't have porn in school libraries.
Hot take.
He says we shouldn't try to change the sex of children. Gosh, what a radical concept. And what happened the next time he ran for election? There's only 5 counties left in Florida that went Democrat. He took counties that he lost by 10%, Hispanic communities, and he won them by 20. He flipped counties 30 points by just talking like a normal person. Meanwhile, if you listen to the mainstream media, you'd think he was the devil himself. But the people love him. Hispanic communities, Black communities, they like the message that he sends. Hispanic communities, they love the nuclear family, yet for some reason they always think they need to vote left. Well, no, they just want you to be normal. We need normal people again. And these conservatives are just too afraid to be normal. When I've sent Pierre messages in the past via email, his staff won't even respond to my email. They send a separate response, so I can't link it to the original email to show, look at how lame this response is. So I get this standalone email saying, we support people's right to love who they want to love. That's what they try to do. They try to make this about sexuality, and they ignore this gender issue completely.
What if a grown man loves an 8-year-old and wants to really love that 8-year-old? Do they support that? Like, this is where it's
going. Against that either.
This is something I wanted to bring up earlier that I kind of lost it, but like this all plays into a lot of the same ideology. It's like, well, if they can consent to this, maybe they can consent to voting at 14 or 12. And if you can consent to voting and cutting your body apart at 14 or 12, maybe you can have sex with adults if you're 12 or you're 10. Or how far does this go? That's the slippery slope, fella. No, it's very real. We went from just bake their cake bigot to, let this transsexual, swing their genitalia around in front of children. So what's the next iteration? When do we say that's it? This is enough.
Listen to this. In British Columbia, there's a man named Adam Lebukin. Now, I'm sorry for people listening to this. This gets graphic. This man raped a 3-month-old boy who required reconstructive surgery. He drowned a 6-month-old. The British Columbia government paid for him to get breast implants and sent him into a women's prison in the Fraser Valley Penitentiary for women.
For women.
I spoke with members of our NDP, the even further left Communist Party of Canada, the New Democratic Party, back during our provincial election in 2020. I walked into their campaign headquarters in Victoria, and I spoke with this woman named Grace Lohr, who was running for a seat. I was trying to meet with the Minister of Education at the time. He wasn't in there at that moment. But I spoke to Grace. I didn't know who she was. And I laid out for 10 minutes all this child abuse going on, very calmly, as I do. And one by one, everyone in this room fell silent. And it was amazing. For 10 minutes, I had all these NDP listening raptly. I got to the point where I talked about this man who had raped and murdered babies and how they sent him into a women's prison, where he has now assaulted a woman, of course. And what did they say to me? They cut me off at that point. They said I was making them feel unsafe.
Right.
3 times they had to make this a safe space, and they kicked me out. As I walked back to my car, I looked through the window. Grace Lohr, who's now the Minister of State for Childcare in BC, she was laughing.
Yeah.
Laughing. I came back the next morning. They had hung the transgender flag underneath Rob Fleming's political poster. He was the Minister of Education. These are the same people who our conservatives teamed up with to call it conversion therapy to help a girl feel comfortable as a girl. Parents can go to jail for 5 years if they don't want to transition their kid.
Yeah, they're monsters. They're absolute monsters, reprehensible, low, irredeemable people that can turn a blind eye to the suffering of children. The most who it says everything about a society, how they treat their most vulnerable. There's nothing more vulnerable than an innocent child, and they're willing to turn away and look away and laugh and play games and play politics with things like this. It tells you everything you need to know about who these people are, and the fact that our conservatives, they're like, oh well, they're not that, but they're allowing it. They're permitting it. They're not doing it's their job to conserve our culture and our way of life and all of these, and they're not doing it. So why are we allowing them to do this? These horrible things are happening, and they have not. They would rather. It's more important to them that they be perceived as woke and inclusive and tolerant than protecting lives of children. That's higher in their priority scale. This is not somebody that's worth following. I am never going to take anything from somebody like this. Well, you said a rude thing and you did this and that. You're allowing children to be brutalized, abused, murdered, tortured, and so on. I have absolutely no obligation to care about anything that you say ever. You're beneath me. You're like you're a scumbag. Honestly, I consider these people monstrous, and they'll come at there's just because of the way we talk or the way I express myself, and I'm angry because people should be. That is the appropriate human response to what's happening, and that's just how I do it. So. That's where they're at. Like these people are, it's hate. It's hate. I would say that how hateful and monstrous are you to knowingly ignore this issue to play politics for your career?
Yeah, and this isn't a fringe issue. This is huge. I met with two parents in Langley, British Columbia, 6 months ago. They were sending their girls to the Langley Fine Arts School. So if you're watching this from the Lower Mainland, anywhere in Canada, don't send your kids to that school. Don't send your kids to any fine arts school. It's all these liberal schools where this stuff is on steroids. But the school had hidden from the mom for 3 or 4 months, and the dad, that their daughter was now identifying as a boy and had a new name and pronouns. And the mom could see her daughter's mental health spiraling. And 3 times she asked the school, is there something going on at school? Because my daughter's not doing well. Her mental health is spiraling downwards. And they lied to her 3 times because it's their policy to hide this from the parents. This is grooming children to believe they are something they are not. Every time they use that wrong pronoun, you are affirming with a child that there is something wrong with them, that they were born wrong, that they're not really a girl, they're a boy. And you keep affirming it over and over and over and over, and you make it much harder to undo this damage that's being done. But 45 girls in that one school were identifying as boys. One school. This is everywhere, all across the country. 10% of these kids in many of these high schools now say they're trans or non-binary. You get 50% of the kids, especially the girls, saying that they're lesbian or bisexual. Obviously they're not, but this is a way to get a special status because Canada is addicted to being a victim. That's all you hear from all of these leaders, is how oppressed we are. How all these different classes of people are victims, and there's oppressors and there's oppressees. Yeah. And it's like you have massively depressed people running the country, pushing their own mental health disorders on the rest of us. Yeah. We need positive people.
Yes, we need people that are pro, and I don't mean in the abortion sense, but pro-life, pro-creation, health and beauty and this, life, the things that, and we don't. We have people that are pro-death, pro-entropy and degradation and this kind of thing. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. I lost my train of thought, but the story you told about this NDP, these people, they respond like they're being assaulted. They don't know what to do. They feel uncomfortable and they feel, you're making us feel unsafe. Well, you feel shitty because he's right, and these are hard. The correct response is, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're right. I'm sorry. I need to really go take a long think about this and decide, what's going on here. No, I'm being attacked because I'm always right and I'm a special baby that is never wrong about anything. I never have to account or answer for anything I have ever done. I'm not accountable ever. It's we're being dictated to by a bunch of children, a bunch of evil children.
And the woman I was talking to, Grace Lohr, who won her seat, who's now the Minister of State for Childcare in BC, guess what her job was right before that? Professor of Gender Studies at the University of Victoria.
A made-up job. Nice.
Oh, brother.
So this is what the left does. They have these activists who get elected into school boards, into municipalities, into provincial and federal governments. And that's who's running the country. They don't even represent their own constituents. You know, the Democratic Party, the Liberals, the NDP, whichever leftist party around the world you look at, they don't represent their voters even. Because I've had more conversations about this subject than anyone in the world. Out on the street with people from all walks of life, all political stripes, more than 90% of the population agrees with me.
Absolutely.
Yes. That's what I was going to just quickly, the Anheuser-Busch thing with Mulvaney on the cans there. And that's like, so these leftists, these communists have captured a lot of these positions of power and authority and are now trying to impose their worldview on the majority of people who don't share it at all. And that's, they're going bankrupt. And they're like, oh, well, you guys just, you're all right. No, people are with us. The people of this land, of the country, of the world are on our side, and we're being held hostage by a minority of psychopaths that need to be removed. Right. And the people that are supposed to be removing them are not doing it. So here we are.
Yeah, even with lobotomies, if you go back in history, it was the media that popularized lobotomies. The inventor of the lobotomy received the Nobel Prize in medicine. And this is a procedure where they take literal ice picks and put them through the orbital sockets and jab away at the prefrontal cortex of these people's brains. And apparently some people got better. I mean, maybe if you have someone who's psychotic and you jab away at their brain, yeah, maybe sometimes they'll become more calm or something. Doesn't mean they're getting better. But they did 100,000 of these procedures approximately over decades. And it was the media that popularized it. Human history repeats. Human psychology never changes. And we think that we're this advanced species now because we're so technologically proficient. But the same psychology that existed 100,000 years ago exists today. Yep. And now, who are the victims? They're our kids. So we've just got to keep getting educated, keep telling the truth about this, and we're going to win. But we got a big battle on our hands, especially in Canada.
Absolutely, because this battle is we have a fake opposition party, right? We were just talking about how insane these individuals are, how insane this ideology is. And guess what? Guess what the Conservative Party is doing for a strategy? They are trying to pander to these insane people, pander to these insane ideologies. So even if they do get voted in, it's like, well, they're still selling this insane ideology, and now they have insane supporters. So what exactly have we done here? We just have a blue tie now. They're still pushing trans women are women, and they're not doing anything about this ideology corrupting children in every aspect of our society, right?
Yeah, Greg, it's important to let the devil know that you're open to working with him. You know, that's how you fight him. You trick, it's strategy, bro. It's very strategic.
No, it's
on transgender...
Let the evil in, that's how you win.
Yeah, totally. On Transgender Day of Visibility, Aaron O'Toole, who was the previous leader before he lost to Justin Trudeau, which is just embarrassing to ever lose to Justin Trudeau. I mean, you should just quit politics immediately. But he wrote on Transgender Day of Visibility that he wanted a more equitable country for Canadians. Equitable.
Yeah.
Equity. What does that mean? That means equality of outcome instead of equality of opportunity. No, we don't want equality of outcome. What's that called? That's called communism. And every country in the world who has ever tried this have destroyed their society completely. But that's what this conservative leader, as of a year ago, is still pushing for. This is the language of Trudeau. And I get all these conservative voters online saying, Chris, what are you doing talking bad about Pierre Poilievre? We just need to get them into power, and then they can start looking at these things.
We just got to get the lips out. Is that right?
Yeah.
You are in denial of who this party is. You're in denial. They're not going to change it. It would be better to have them crash and burn and rebuild, having finally gotten the message that being a liberal isn't working with conservatives and normal people. There you go. There's his comment.
Yeah.
Today, we commit to making Canada an equitable place for all people to live. I stand with the trans community in Canada who send rapists into women's prisons, who sterilize children, who send men into women's rape shelters, who vandalize rape shelters and nail a dead rat to the door in Vancouver, and who tell women that they need to wax their balls or else they're going to take them to the Human Rights Tribunal. That's who Aaron O'Toole stands with.
There's no leadership over there. Like if that was, and again, I'm not saying but if it was me, Me being me, what I believe, and I saw this. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. Go over there. That's where the liberals are. That's where you belong. Get out. And
I think we've gotten our point across in the fact that the Conservative Party of Canada is absolutely cowardly. It's sickening. It's actually sickening. You know, if there's, you said it in another tweet actually, or I think Maxime Bernier like quoted you here, and I think it's a good summary. We have all sorts of crazy things going on in the world today, but trying to change the sex of children is as crazy it can possibly get. You know, like if this is not something that the Conservative Party is willing to make a stand on, then holy crap. Throw it out. It's rotten. It's bad. Yep. Moving on. Next. But for the rest of the conversation, I would like us to focus on solutions. What are we going to do? Chris, you probably know better than any of us. Do we have allies? Do you have any allies in Canada? Maybe they're not politicians, but are there groups that are starting to kind of come up and bubble up and starting to actually make some meaningful change in this country?
So it's just starting, really. And my strategy all along has been just keep creating awareness, have one conversation at a time, never stop. Every day, I just keep creating awareness. And I know eventually people will come along and they'll start to wear their hats and they'll get going. But I just got off a call right before this with about 75 leaders across Canada, different people who have been involved with fighting COVID. It was a bit of an older crowd. They go back in time, having fought different things, but I'm getting them aware, and they're well connected. They're well connected politically. So we're starting to push back. We've got guys like you talking about this now. You guys weren't talking about this a year ago. Maybe you were, but everyone's talking about it more now. A lot of these people who were fighting the mandates and restrictions on our freedom, I made friends with a lot of them during all that madness because I knew when this COVID atrocity, the way we were being treated, I knew when that finally died down, that these were the same people who were going to end up fighting this. And they are. Yeah. And people like Maxime Bernier have taken a position on this. His party has come out with a formal policy as part of his platform against all of this. He reaches 1 million Canadians that voted for him. I think it was 800,000 Canadians voted for him. So we're getting there. But there's not really any organizations who are fighting this, to be honest with you. So we need to build them, and we're going to build them.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly, what has to happen because, what's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing you've always done, expecting something different to happen, a different result, supporting this establishment, legacy, dinosaur, obsolete, no good, rotten Conservative Party is not going to get anywhere. And that was the point I was trying to make the other day, where it's like where we have people like yourself, we have people like, Chris Sky, for example, we have men in this country, Hilliard, like all over the place that are saying the right things, putting themselves on the line, putting themselves in harm's way, demonstrating to me and for everyone else that that's a man that's willing to take a shot on behalf of somebody else. That's somebody you follow. That's a leader. That's what leadership is. Not somebody that sits down in a building, taking the easy road and hiding and becoming a millionaire to not fight. That's a loser. That's not somebody we want. So if we convince enough people and show them the truth and get them to say, hey, stop your money, your energy, your time, your support, even just things as retweets, stop giving it to these losers in the Conservative Party. Start pushing behind engines and personalities and people that are actually fighting. And if all of that fuel and all that, again, the analogy, you've got, these guys over here hanging out drinking margaritas on a beach, not fighting, and you've got these guys over here on the Eastern Front, neck deep in guts and so on. Feed them. Give them the ammunition, give them the power, give them the support, and then watch what happens. All of it's going to go in the right direction, and that not only will we win, it will be an absolute devastating, they would be destroyed. There's no, again, we have the numbers, we have the people. The trucker convoy proved this. No one's happy with the status quo. And if that trucker convoy had been a political party, it would have been the most well-funded one in the country. $12 million in a matter of weeks. That scares these people. And that's the answer is regular, everyday dads, guys, Canadian men, moms, find the because they're no different than us. They're just millionaires with a platform that they didn't earn, that's been loaned to them by this power establishment. 1-to-1, man-to-man against me, you, any of these people. They can't hold a candle. They can't. And it's a matter of time. So we just have to keep plugging away, I think, and sooner or later the dam's going to burst. The overwhelming firepower, the numbers, and it's going to be too much. We'll overwhelm them soon.
Exactly. There's this expression that politics is downstream from culture. Well, it's people like us, other people, we're the ones who need to change the culture. Yep. And then eventually some of these cowardly politicians might come along. But I wouldn't hold out any hope for the current batch. We saw with Pierre, he didn't mention a thing about how our freedoms were taken away from us and we were fired from our jobs because we didn't want to put an experimental vaccine in our body that didn't work. He didn't say anything until the truckers made it safe for him to say it. He's all about whole.
Yep. He doesn't believe in real things. There's nothing in here is what built this country, is what made this a great place to live. It's what made, all of the wonderful things we have and the traditions that we have. That was provided to us by strong, courageous men and women, the people that were willing to do these things, go into the hard areas and put themselves on the line in the name of others and our children in the future. So that's what got us to a good place. And what got us to this awful place is supporting weak, feckless, impotent losers that don't have this. There's nothing in there. It's an empty, there's no fire, there's not a flicker, there's nothing in there. So we have to go back to the old way, find the leaders and feed them.
And the good news is that the truth is on our side. The humanity is on our side. What is right is on our side. But the bad news is that, as we've seen with yourself, Billboard Chris, and yourself, Jeremy McKenzie, the path forward is not easy. Because part of the whole problem is this Conservative Party is taking the easy route. They're taking the path of least resistance. And what that comes down to is being stuck in this liberal frame. We're stuck in this liberal framework to the point where the Conservative Party did not even want to disavow Justin Trudeau for essentially, trying to divide the country or for using his authoritarian rule. And similarly, they do not want to even touch the transgender issue. And I think the reason for that is because it is in the liberal frame, right? And if you even touch the trans issue, then you have to, they don't want to protect children because then they know they have to take a firm stand on the entire transgender thing. I really do feel like it's all or nothing. I think that protecting children is obviously a thing that's going to get a lot of people on board. However, I think to truly fight against this thing, we need to go all the way to the core to say, no, trans women are not women. Even if you are a grown-up, you are, because it's like, that's where the insanity really begins, in my opinion.
The courts are corrupted too, guys. So it's everywhere. I can speak to that, but go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, I can't remember now, but shit, what did you just say, Craig?
He was saying that we need to go to the courts, but look what happened in BC last year. Yeah. Rob Hoogland, the father who tried to stop his daughter from going on testosterone and becoming sterilized, was sent to jail for 6 months for speaking out against it. In a separate family dispute in family court, a judge told him if he didn't use his daughter's new name and pronouns, if he misgendered his own daughter, it was tantamount to family violence. Wow. I know parents who have had child protective services come to their home to ensure that they're going along with the transition socially or psychologically of their own kid. This is scary for parents. They can't speak out. So it took someone like me to speak for them. I've sat down with big burly men in a Tim Hortons having coffee as this father of three, a very successful man running a huge company, is bawling his eyes out because he's losing his daughter to this cult and he's powerless to stop it. And he doesn't know what to do. And this girl, of course, like most of these kids, is on the autism spectrum as well. And she's been thoroughly brainwashed by school and social media. So it's just scary for parents. And the courts aren't on our side either. So really, we just got to keep creating awareness, massive awareness. And we have to educate people. Now, Pierre Poilievre, we don't have an election going on right now. Nope. He doesn't have to play it safe. You know what he could do? What a real leader would do? Is he would start making 10-minute videos every single day to educate people about this issue. He would have on experts to talk about gender dysphoria, to talk about how almost all of these kids grow out of it. We know this historically from all the studies that are done. He could just every day start educating people about this issue and about other issues. It's the age of social media. You don't need CBC on your side. You can get the message out there and you can educate people. But they don't do any of that.
Or even better, just retweet Billboard Chris. Take a photo with Billboard Chris. Boom.
And that was a criticism from their supporters when I would, level these attacks against them. They say, well, what do you want them to do? What are they supposed to do? I was like, why can't they do what I'm doing? Just tell the truth. They have a much bigger platform. I'm doing more with much less. They have all the guns, all the firepower, everything you could imagine, and they sit idle and quiet.
Yeah. And CBC is the worst media in the world, perhaps. for spinning things and twisting things.
Yeah, they're horrendous.
But I've been interviewed by them on camera for 18 minutes after I got mobbed by 200 university students in Ottawa. It was the #1 item on the news that night. It was front page news in the Ottawa Citizen. It reached millions. But CBC interviewed me after this mobbing on camera for 18 minutes. CTV interviewed me for 15 minutes. I recorded both of these interviews, of course, to protect myself because I know they lie.
Yeah.
But guess how much of my footage they ran when they ran this news segment at night?
12 seconds.
Zero.
Oh, zero? Okay.
Why? Because I didn't say anything hateful.
Yeah.
And they're only looking for something hateful to fill out their narrative. But I didn't give them anything.
They're like, uh-oh.
Even me,
He's
the
making
biggest
sense.
bigot in the country, they couldn't even find anything hateful to say. Pierre needs to learn how to talk about this issue and start talking about it, but he won't. He just won't. So all the conservative voters need to get over their delusion about who this guy is, just because he says a few things about inflation, the easiest subject in the world to talk about. Honestly,
the bare minimum, Greg. Hey, we love that, don't we?
The bare minimum, and not only that, he relies so much on Trudeau so bad. I not Trudeau. That's why you vote for me. And when it comes down to these issues, actually, you're exactly like Trudeau, aren't you? So you
That's how we got Obama. Why did we get Obama? He's not Bush, you know.
Yeah.
It was the whole you're voting again. My father's been saying this his whole life. He said, he's like, I'm so tired of voting people out just once. I'd love to vote someone in. I'd love to vote someone in just once. I sent you a graphic there, Greg, on Telegram. I don't know if you want to look at it or not, but
sure.
I was going to say that towards the end. I don't know how much time you want to.
Yeah. Well, how much time do you got left here, Chris?
I'm free, man. I kept today free. I'm going to be doing some stuff with my family, but
awesome.
As long as it takes, let's get it done. Let's do it right.
Absolutely. I do want to clarify something. I did not say that or I may have misspoke, but I didn't mean to say that the answer is in the courts. I do not have much faith in this judicial system. I think I meant in terms of how we communicate and how we kind of, take a stand on this issue. Obviously, like I said, getting, defending children, I think will bring a lot of people into the fold. But I think to really pierce through the liberal frame they've created is to really say that I think, trans women are not women. I don't think that's a real thing. Okay. Like that needs to be the line. It's not enough to say that, I'm still going to validate you as a real woman, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, because there's so many insane things that we need to smash and shatter. One of them being all this weird gender affirming care, they always say life-saving treatment. Life-saving treatment? I mean, let's get real here, folks. It's like, hey, can you please, if you don't chop my off, then I'm going to kill myself. Like, how insane is that? It's
about as insane to me as these people claiming it's about life and saving lives and these people need health care. Yeah, there's quite a few tens of thousands actually across this country that have suffered as a result of this vaccine that you've pushed so much, Conservative Party. So maybe you want to turn your attention, since you care about people's health and concerned with their care and so on, unless you're a hypocrite and this is all just politics for you. And I sent you that graphic. I just wanted to, towards the end, or because something Chris mentioned where, it's hard work. People don't want to do hard work, especially in Canada. They want to take the easy road. They want to take, but the thing is, all you're doing is making a choice. You're just shifting this burden and this suffering to a different area. Greg's saying it. Like you can do the hard work.
We really need an organization.
Yeah,
we really need an organization because I get so many messages. People want to fight, but they don't know how, and there's no one to join. Yeah. So maybe we can brainstorm something, guys. Yeah. We got to start something.
We're working on some stuff here, but here's like you can suffer. Yeah, here it is. Here you could suffer and then endure. They don't want to do the hard work. It's going to be a lot of hard work. I'm going to have to fight. I'm going to have all these things happen. It's going to be, I'm not going to do it. Okay, well, your choice to not fight and resist is simply going to make your suffering come at you from it. Now you're enduring, this is suffering. These children are suffering. And because they were too cowardly to engage in the fight when it needed to be fought, I don't want to suffer. Well, now we're all suffering even more. So there's no escaping this. There's no way out. You can't hide from this forever. And the continued repeated attempts to run and hide and find somewhere to rock to crawl under and hope it goes away. It's the Homer Simpson defense. I don't know if you ever watched that Simpsons episode where he's doing the exam for his job for the nuclear plant or something. He said, Mr. Simpson, what are you going to do? The exam's in a few hours. I'm going to hide under some coats during the exam and hope that somehow everything works out. That's for children. That's an idiotic thing to, but that's what the Conservative Party apparently is planning to do. So I'm not okay with that. So we can either get enough get enough people together to pressure them to say, you guys have to start doing your job. And, otherwise we are simply going to go around you and we will find people to do it for you because we're not going to support this anymore.
I mean, essentially that's what the PPC is doing. The problem with these parties is a good person can't even run. So none of us would be allowed to run for any of these mainstream parties.
We can make their lives miserable. We can certainly make it very hard for them to continue. I very much intend to keep doing that until I'm dead.
So you're really in the worst of it, Chris, being in being in British Columbia. That's where Soji came from. That's where the Infants Act you mentioned, which sounds totally insane. That's only in BC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So in there's other similar laws, I would say, but I haven't examined them all. But yes, in British Columbia, we have this law called the Infants Act, which applies to all children. It's this really archaic law going all the way back to the United Kingdom, honestly. But in the 90s, they made an amendment so that parents have no say over any medical decisions for their children at any age, provided that the doctor thinks it's necessary and the doctor thinks the child can understand. So when this 13-year-old girl was indoctrinated in the Delta School District to think she was a boy, and she was sent to a psychologist he's here in Surrey, in the same city I live in, where this psychologist who works for the BC Ministry of Children and Families, he gave a talk at the Vancouver Library a few years ago. His name is Wallace Wong. He says he's transitioning over 1,000 kids, including over 500 in the foster system. That's 8% of all kids in foster care. One psychologist for the government is socially transitioning. New name, pronouns, all that.
Something else.
He sent this girl to the BC Children's Hospital, and they sent this father a letter. The endocrinologist's name is Brendan Hirsch, and he sent Rob Hoogland a letter which said, Rob, you can be a friend and advisor to your daughter, but you can't intervene in the sterilization of your own child.
The state is God now, and that's communism right there. The state is God, and all power and authority comes from the state.
Destroy the family, right? And I wanted to ask Chris, has there been any wins? Have we gotten any of our people elected into a school board trustee position? Have you seen any wins since you've started doing your activism?
Wins all day long in terms of awareness. Tons of wins in the United States where people are fighting this. When it comes to school boards and that in Canada, no wins at all.
Okay.
I think.
But we'll change that. Some people started to run against gender identity in the last school board cycle in Ontario and BC. We had people running. They all lost, but at least for the first time they were running on this platform to get gender identity ideology out of schools. Right. So we just need to keep creating more awareness, and we'll get some bigger names, and we'll get more funding, and we'll get more help next time around.
We're getting there, and it's like the media is the final frontier of this. So people are thinking, well, the media is saying they're the last ones that are going to get off the bus. They're the last ones. So if you're waiting for them to, as an indication of where this battle is going, they're going to right to the dead. They're fanatics. They're zealots. They're going to go right to the end, and then we'll see what happens. One last thing I wanted to mention about this is I don't think a lot of people consider is the fertility issue. What's going to happen? Like we're only having 1.2 or less children per family in Canada, which is not good. And now we're castrating and sterilizing a large portion of an already shrinking class of people, and these children are not going to be able to have families. This is self-destructive and insane. Like, who's going to pay the taxes? Who's going to work the jobs? Who's going to take care of these boomers that are all, who's going to be paying for your retirement bills? Who's going to be keeping the economy and the Canada pension plan going? Because there's no more people. Oh, we're just going to import 1 billion people from Pakistan. Was that the plan? We need to have these conversations.
It's thousands of kids right now. There's waiting lists at all these gender clinics. So I hear this argument all the time. This is part of depopulation, and I don't think that's the intent behind this, because this honestly goes back decades into academia. It goes all the way back to John Money in the 50s and 60s,
1920s in Berlin, actually.
Yeah, and even before that, there was a different phase of this. But this idea of gender identity floated around academia forever, and now it's emerged into the mainstream. And when gay rights were won, the goals moved from gay rights to trans rights, and the left conflates these as being the same thing. And for most people, when you say the letters LGBT together, it strikes fear in their hearts, and it stops them from speaking about anything. But LGB honestly has almost nothing to do with the T. One is attraction, one is a denial of reality itself. And we have queer theory being pushed into society, where they try to take everything that's perverse and abnormal and normalize it, including pedophilia, where they now call these people minor attracted persons. Or we had this professor at Victoria last week who wrote a book about some pedophile who raped more than 1,000 kids. She didn't call it rape. With a smile on her face, this professor at the University of Victoria called it intergenerational sex.
Oh my God.
That person should be in prison. That person should be in prison.
Absolutely.
That's hate speech. You know, if there's any kind of like you're the things you're saying are insane and evil. You're encouraging people to, you know, you're minimizing victimization of children. You don't belong in this country at all.
Well,
Yes,
and not
we're
only that,
dealing with
let's really add the context here. Jeremy, you've been called an extremist and all sorts of horrible names by the media, and so have you, Billboard Chris. We're the extremists. We're the extremists. Yeah. We're not the ones rationalizing pedophilia and rape. Okay, like it's absolutely absurd, and that's why we should not have any sort. We should not be pulling any punches, and we should not be giving these people any sort of excuses to not stand up what is clearly insanity. But Chris, I want to ask, you know, when it comes to the wins in the states, I'm not sure if you've watched the play-by-play of these certain bills getting passed, but what did it look like? What did these leaders look like in the states? Do they go, hey guys, I'm really cool with trans folk and everything, but I really just think we should be protecting children? Do they say that? Or do they say this trans ideology is really messed up and we need to start by, you know, protecting children? Like, do they give sympathy to the LGBT thing and then say, but we have to protect children? Or do they say this whole LGBT thing has gone too far and we got to start by, you know what I mean? Like, do you hear the difference?
Yeah. So I'll address that. So the conversation with adults is a separate conversation to a degree. Now, when it comes to, it's not just protecting kids that they're doing. They're also getting men out of women's sports. So I work now, I have great friends all over the place. I work with the Heritage Foundation, which is the biggest conservative think tank in the United States, the Manhattan Institute. They write model legislation for states so that they can basically plug it in. You know, there's bills about birth certificates, how you can't change the sex of a child on their birth certificate. There's bathroom bills. There's this child transition stuff. There's sports. There's all sorts of different avenues that need to be addressed here. But honestly, we just made them aware of what was going on. And the actual conservatives down there said, whoa, we can't have this. We have to put a stop to this. And they all support it because now they know what's going on. This was education. And the biggest thing, honestly, that moved the needle last year were these Boston Children's Hospital videos that I tweeted out, because it woke up all the conservative media and podcasters. I think people thought these kids were struggling with things. They were having a hard time in life, and they knew these gender clinics were doing weird stuff. But then when you hear it from the words of these gender professionals themselves, that children are transgender seemingly from the womb, that they're carving up a girl's forearm to turn that into a phallus, and you show pictures of these mutilated forearms, when they learn that they're cutting off the breasts of 12 and 13 and 14-year-old girls, and they hear it from the mouths of the professionals themselves, not some straight white Canadian guy who can easily be dismissed. Well, it woke them all up, and they said, what the heck's going on? And it started this wave of investigations into other children's hospitals. And then pretty soon, all the conservatives down there were talking about this. And the red states are fixing this. But up here in Canada, they just got blinders on. Pierre Poilievre and everyone else just put their head in the sand, and they pretend this isn't happening.
Unforgivable.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So you're saying what actually caused this tipping point were these videos from Boston that showed the actual kind of gender professionals kind of leaking some information or saying the quiet part out loud. And once that information became public, then it became easier for conservatives to actually take a stand.
Yes, it was awareness that created this. So those videos helped. Matt Walsh helped a lot with his film, What is a Woman? His investigation into Vanderbilt, where they're talking about how these gender surgeries are good moneymakers. All sorts of people. I mean, I've made a ton of friends who are now digging up information. Like Megan Brock is this woman in Philadelphia. She's now writing for the Daily Caller. But I stumbled upon her. She was digging up some dirt on something, and I recognized she was a star right away. And in the last 6 months, she's been uncovering information about Rachel Levine, the assistant health secretary, this man identifying as a woman. She's been doing freedom of information requests. My friend Nicole Solis in Rhode Island submitted freedom of information requests to get the school curriculum in Rhode Island, and the teachers union sued her for requesting information. But she's a beast, and she's just a mom. She's a lawyer by trade, but she's a stay-at-home mom right now because her kids are really small. They're beautiful. I've met them. And she just is a regular person like us who took this upon herself to make a difference. We've got my friends Tiffany Justice and Tina Deskovich. These were two moms who were on school boards from 2016 to 2020 in Florida. They got tired of our kids being treated as afterthoughts. And in January 1st, 2021, they started a group called Moms for Liberty with $500 selling t-shirts out of a spare bedroom. Now there's 115,000 moms all across the country. Yeah. And I've helped to inspire them to fight this gender business.
Yeah. And they
so it's
the
people
women have
creating the change, and the politicians are always last. But it's us. It's up to us, because the politicians are not going to do anything.
Yeah, they will stick their, especially these losers, they'll stick their finger in their mouth and find out which way is the wind blowing and then go with that. It's our job to blow the wind, you know. And the thing is, like, all these moms and they've been at this forever, like years of this. Like, they realized first that the children were being threatened and in danger, and now it's like, but the biggest piece on the board that hasn't been activated yet is the dads and the men. And they're starting to notice. I'm getting guys messaging me being like, because they know I'm this guy. You know, friends of mine from the army or like my before times, you know, no, I'm like the political guy, but they're not interested. They like to watch their hockey games and, try to ignore a lot of this stuff, but now can't even do that. They're like, what the hell is the Matt Walsh video you just mentioned? I had a guy the other day ask me, he's like, have you seen this? I'm like, yeah, man. And he's starting to just all of a sudden become aware of this nightmare that's happening. And all I do is like, here's my card. Welcome aboard. Welcome to hell. Because once you see it, they don't go back to sleep after that. So they just shove this in everybody's face. You can't even drink a beer now.
Exactly.
So these guys are all starting to look around like, what's going on? They're waking the sleeping giant is what's happening. And it's too late. It's just a matter of time. We just have to keep doing what we're doing. And again, the overwhelming force of this many people pushing together in the same direction is certainly a lot more powerful than a few people in a boardroom at some media company or some empty suit politicians that don't even have the courage to say the name of a country that's buying our politicians.
So here's the $1 million question, gentlemen. I think you're right. I think popularizing this conversation, popularizing this idea, giving permission for more people to talk about it and to speak out about it and say, hey, that Billboard Chris guy standing up, hey, that school board trustee standing up, I agree with them. Once this happens, once this popularity happens, hypothetically, but I could see it happening, then what are we going to do when the Conservative Party they're like, oh, the wind's blowing that way. Oh, okay. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, we've always wanted to challenge this transgender stuff. Actually, now that you mention it, now that this is a huge popular thing that is sweeping across the country, and we now see that it is popular. Yeah. Now, as Pierre Poilievre, I'm going to start feeding you some breadcrumbs and telling you that I'm actually fighting against this stuff. What are we going to do then? Are we going to believe them when they feed us this lip service? Because this is exactly what happened, of course, with the pandemic, right? Hey, make sure you get the jab, and then afterward it was like, I was always against that stuff. I'm always with the convoy, right?
We'll be there to say, remember this, and they're not going to get away with it. Absolutely not.
They're not. I don't believe Pierre will ever even say that on this issue. I think he'll be gone. So. He won't be the leader by the time they ever do get to this. I did a Vivek Ramaswamy a few weeks ago, who's running for president. He knows Pierre. His campaign manager knew Pierre, knows Pierre. They were going to try to talk to him for me, and I said, you can try.
Yeah.
But, Vivek is very anti-woke. That's basically what he's running on. And I think he'd be a great president. But we just got to keep getting the word out there, because you never know what the future holds. You never know what doors are going to open. And sometimes people do surprise you and people come out of nowhere. But we just got to keep the gas pedal down to the floor and just keep hammering as hard as we can. Grow our own social media followings. These are important because you can reach a lot of people. So I think in a couple of years, I'll be up to 1 million followers and I can start having more impact politically. because I can wake up more Canadians every day. But we just got to keep going and create awareness, because eventually we will win this battle. It's simply a question of how many kids are harmed before we do.
Probably sooner than that. I think you'll have a million followers sooner than that, I think.
Hope so.
Yeah, and it's very clear what happens when you stand up and tell the truth. Sure, will you get attacked for it? Yes, but you'll also get a groundswell of support, right? And I think you're right. As the insanity continues to grow and to proliferate in our culture, because it's beginning impossible to ignore, your message, our message, messages like this are only going to become more relevant and urgent. But we're about to wrap it up. Jeremy, let people know where they can find you and any final words, and then to Chris.
I do. I just have one quick story to tell you about, and that's relevant to this, and
Story
it's about
time.
fighting, and it's about battle, it's about war, it's about the struggle.
I love Jeremy's war
There's
analogies.
lots of, from any kind of historical war, or even just like a fight, a cage fight, anything. You're in your own head. You never know what the other guy's thinking, what they're up to, how they're feeling, and so on. And you can be pounding away and banging away and thinking you're getting your ass handed to you. And the other guy could be on the verge of surrender, and you have no idea until he does. Back in George Floyd, Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier 3 times. And the third, I think it was the Thrilla in Manila, it was called. They fought in the Philippines, and they had to actually stop the fight because Frazier was so beat up and couldn't even see out of one eye, and the doctor ended up stopping the fight. Now, what Frazier didn't know, and what the referee didn't know, is that on the other side of the ring, Ali had quit. He had told his trainer that, I'm done. I'm not getting up for the last round. He wins. This is it. I can't do this anymore. So if it hadn't been for that referee, stopping the fight, and, Muhammad Ali won. He had given up. He had surrendered, and the only way that would find out is we have to keep fighting until, somebody breaks, and that don't let them trick you into thinking that they're this kind of invincible, omnipotent monster that can never be. I think they're under a lot more pressure and taking a lot more damage than people realize, and there's more of us every day. We've got more support every day. The blows are becoming more frequent and harder and more powerful. It's a withering attack across the board, and they're going to have to either react, or have to correct their behavior and react, or they're going to be destroyed. That is just a matter of time.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Jeremy. And in one way, I almost feel bad for them, because it's like, it must be hard to live with yourself when you're constantly lying and you can't explain yourself, and you're justifying total insanity day after day after day, every single day, putting your clown makeup on, literally and figuratively.
They want to get out of this without having to take their licks. They want to win this without having to admit they were wrong, that they participated in this lie, that they supported it. And there is no way. It's like that's between, you're going to have to, face God on that one, buddy. You can't keep going down this road anymore and think that it's going to get better. The longer you do it, the worse it gets. The only way out is out, and you're going to have to come back the way you came, and people are going to, say what they're going to say. But if you either commit to telling the truth and getting back on the straight and narrow path that no one wants to do, but it's the right thing to do, or you keep going where you're going, and hey, you're only of yourself to blame if you destroy yourself. So
that's right. Any final things you wanted to say before we get going, Chris? And feel free to plug anything that you wanted to as well.
Sure. Thank you for asking. If people want to support me, they can go to billboardchris.com. There's a donate button there. But really, I want people to get educated and have conversations about this. I'll survive no matter what. If I have to do odd jobs, as I did for a long time when I first started this, that's what I'll do. But here's the deal. It's really simple. There is no such thing as a transgender child. They are called girls and boys, and they are beautiful just as they are. No drugs or scalpels needed. That's the message we need to send. We need to keep saying it, and we're going to win. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you so much. Make sure you follow at Billboard Chris on Twitter, or check out his website, billboardchris.com. And Jeremy McKenzie, where can they find you?
RagingDistant.com, as always, you all know. But I just do want to say before we leave, it was an honor and a privilege, sir. And, we got your back. Whatever you need, you just give us a holler. We'll be there. And, they attack you, they attack me. Attack on one is an attack on all. So that's how we have to do this. Approach this like we're all on the same team here. And let's go. I appreciate everything you're doing, and you're inspiring a lot of people. And I want you to, remember that when you're out there facing down the demons. There's millions of people that need you to do what you're doing, and need us to do what we're doing, and we're going to keep doing it. And the withering attacks will never stop. Thank you so much for what you're doing, man.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to fighting with you.
Absolutely. And for those who want to see me live, I'll be doing this event, Speaking Moistly Live, talking about the failing healthcare system. There's tickets available. There's going to be Dr. Patrick Phillips, Sarah C. from Frontline Nurses. We'll be talking about the gender ideology once again. But you can go to CanadaPoli.com/event for that. Aside from that, thank you so much, gentlemen. Billboard Chris, as Jeremy was saying, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to fight alongside you and to support and spread your message. And as always, guys, it is okay to demand higher standards. Thanks, guys.